Hello and welcome to Live United. I'm Margaret O'Neal, President of the United Way of Central West Virginia. It's my extreme pleasure to be with you today after kind of a year of hiatus. We all know that, COVID-19 has been a struggle for everybody and certainly no different for the United Way or the folks here in Central West Virginia. So the first thing I'll say is it's been really hard. We know that a lot of you folks out there who listen have been at home, working from home, teaching school from home for your kids, seniors who were nervous about leaving home. We just know it's been a struggle and that resources have been hard to get, especially at the beginning. I saw Clorox wipes and Lysol spray in a store this weekend, and I was so excited because it was the first time in a year that we really had access to some of the cleaning supplies and really items that we needed to put our hands on through COVID-19. So it's been a long year. We're excited to be with you today. We wanted to take just a few minutes to share a little bit with you about what the United Way has been doing for the past year and how we can continue to support the needs of our community past COVID, during and after, and how we can make sure that everybody in our community has the best impact in a positive way that we can get from this virus. So you see me, holding a mask. That's a little different. We've given out a bunch of those, and so I'm going to start just a little slideshow. Better to look at that than me anyway, and we're going to go through a little information about what the United Way has been doing for the past 365 days. So that's just kind of where we are pre and post pandemic. The next slide you're going to see is a picture of our office. So I wanted to put that there just to make sure you know where we are. We're located on the corner of Court and Smith Street in Charleston, our physical presence, right across from West Virginia American Water's treatment plant. We have had the door locked pretty much with a doorbell, so we've been open. We've had staff in the building from the very first day of the emergency declaration. About 4 or 5 of us who stayed very safe and very masked and very socially distanced and protected, but wanted to make sure that we were able to continue to serve the community. So that's a picture of what our office looks like. And then you can see, the things that were kind of important. We wanted to get supplies out to people. We wanted to make sure masks were available. We were hearing all over the place from people about food insecurity. And then what we all know is rental and utility assistance has become a huge concern to people, not only here in West Virginia, but around the country. So people were saying, you get a hiatus, you won't get evicted. We're not going to turn your utilities off. And for the first few months or so, I think all that happened the way people expected. But then as time went on, we started to see people reaching out to us at the United Way and through West Virginia 211 to really express concern about evictions and utility disconnections. And so the next slide you see is a little bit about how many of those things that we were able to hand out. Thousands of masks. We did a drive-through mask distribution in our parking lot so that people didn't have to get out of their car and they could feel very safe. So over 10,000 masks, over 150 boxes of gloves. At the beginning, that was a really big request. People couldn't find good rubber gloves or plastic gloves to use to protect themselves and their families. Well over 1,100 bottles of hand sanitizer, and those came in every shape, size, and smell. If you got some of those early versions, they smelled a lot like moonshine, but they did the trick, and we were so grateful to have them. Partners like VOAD and many others who reached out to us and made sure we had hand sanitizer to distribute. 75 containers of Clorox wipes because we ordered early and had some of those in the building. Over 200 plastic face shields. A lot of people wear both. And then 60 thermometers, and we're still getting requests for those today. So if you're watching the show and you work for a nonprofit or you're a senior at home and you need some of those supplies, please continue to reach out to us at the United Way, and we really want to try to help meet those needs. Very early on in the pandemic, we were contacted, which isn't uncommon in disaster, by companies and corporations who wanted to make donations to support this effort of recovery and really trust the United Way to do the work and take no administrative fee out of those dollars. So this slide just gives you an idea of what our Response and Recovery Fund was able to do. We served the needs of almost 52,000 individuals with those funds in the amount of 42 grants. So nonprofits were able to reach out to us and request funding from $2,500 to $5,000. We had a small group of people reviewing those grants, and because of the generosity of so many companies, BB&T, Dow Corporation, Toyota Corporation, Huntington Bank, the list goes on and on, that people reached out to us, Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation, so many people that said, we'll trust you guys to do the work. Here's the money. Make sure these nonprofits stay open, keep their doors open, and continue to serve and meet the needs of our community. And then many of you probably experienced some real food insecurity, especially at the beginning. So when the food supply chain was really in doubt, we worried about whether trucks could get here and whether people could get to the food bank to get the food bank to the food pantry. And then we worried about how people were going to be able to keep the food pantries open because so many volunteers are seniors, and our seniors were staying home and staying safe. And so the United Way worked with so many partners, including Mountaineer Food Bank, the Salvation Army, Cabin Creek Health Systems, the Kanawha Valley Collective. And this is the slide that I've talked about a bunch of times, but I can't seem to get through it when I read the part that almost 77,000 bellies were filled by our staff and volunteers, and then sent home with that warm meal and then shelf-stable products to take home to make sure that they had food for the following days and weeks ahead. And that happened rain, snow, shine, it didn't matter. And it still doesn't matter because those feedings are continuing on today. And if you want to know about our food distribution, just like us on Facebook, United Way of Central West Virginia, and you'll be able to see those feeding sites usually the last week of every month. In addition to that, rent and utility assistance. So again, many partners who made this grant funding possible, but almost $130,000 worth of grant funding to meet utility and rental assistance for those who experienced hardship due to COVID-19. That's about 472 families who kept their lights, water, and heat on because of contributions from individuals, corporations, and foundations who supported our work. And then we had a great partnership that's continuing today with the City of Charleston. So we call that United We House, and we were specifically focused on people within Charleston city limits because it was a city funding resource, and people who were either recently homeless due to COVID, so they lost their job, they couldn't pay their rent, and they were evicted, or someone who was about to experience homelessness because of the same reason. And so that partnership has led us to assisting, you can see, well over 230 adults, including 51 children, 200 and almost 90 people off the streets and into safe and secure housing. And we always worry about the children. So when we get calls for assistance, we certainly value everyone and their needs. But when we're talking to families who have 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 1-year-olds, babies, and they're going through this epidemic with no water or no heat, those were things we wanted to be able to jump on pretty quickly. So again, our thanks to the City of Charleston for that support and that housing support, which continues today. And I think most of you guys, if you've heard me talk before, know the connection between West Virginia 211 and the United Ways of West Virginia. So 211 is your information and referral number. It's good for you anywhere in West Virginia. It's toll free. You can call from your phone, from a landline, from a payphone. You're also able to text to 211. So if you're using your phone to text, you would use the number 898-211, and then the body of your message would be your zip code. And when that happens, someone's going to text you back and say, how can I help you? And that zip code tells us exactly where you are so that we can put you in touch with the resources that you need that are closest to you in proximity. So if you're expressing need for food and you want to know where the closest food pantry is, we're going to look at your zip code, and we're going to look at our supply of data, and we're going to connect you to the resource that's closest to you for you and your family to be able to get some support. And so it's kind of crazy numbers. When the pandemic started, we kind of hit go at March the 15th, March the 16th. I believe the City of Charleston made their declaration on March the 12th, but it was all right there in the middle of March. And so these numbers include all of 2020, so just that little bit before the COVID pandemic hit and then through the rest of the year. And you can kind of see our folks were busy. We saw about a 400% increase right off the bat in calls to 211. 21,000 plus calls, almost 1,500 chats on our website, and nearly 3,000 texts from people asking for assistance in a variety of ways, be it food insecurity, where's a local daycare, our daycare's open, where can I get tested, how much does it cost, what do I do if I'm a senior and I can't go out and I need food, what if I need my medicine delivered. The questions ran the gamut, and our operators across the state of West Virginia in 14 different United Ways stood up and answered those calls 24/7 with the help of First Choice, and made sure that what I love about this slide is that 155,742 minutes of help for West Virginians when they really needed it the most, when people didn't know who to call. We're so thankful that 211 was there, and that we're able to report back to you today that 211 is still there and still ready to take your calls and answer your questions and help support the needs of our citizens. And so a lot of people ask us, what do people call for? So we thought this was a little interesting to show you pretty much all of 2020, and it really wasn't anything that we didn't expect. Utility and rent assistance, obviously, in that food insecurity piece, really early on, I would say from March to July or August, we really heard from a lot of people who were struggling with food resources and food insecurity. And then interestingly enough, in just about the whole first quarter of this year, so this data is about 10 months or 10 days into March, so January, February, and about 10 days of March. And you can see that food is now not in the top three. And what creeped up into the top three are what we call COVID information or COVID requests. So people are really wanting to know where they could get tested. People are really wanting to know where they can get a vaccine. People were really struggling with some of the challenges wrapped around COVID. So, what if I can't get my kid to school, and what if I can't afford internet and I need to homeschool? So there were a lot of questions specifically related to the pandemic that kind of pushed food down into the fourth or fifth request for us, still seeing that that utility and rental assistance were number one. And I'm going to stop here for just 1 second, and if you're watching, you want to be aware of this. So if you have a need for utility or rental assistance in West Virginia, the West Virginia Housing Development Fund is about to open up, and I think opening today, so it should be available to you through March and April at least, as long as the supplies last. They have about $200 million to distribute to West Virginians that were affected by COVID if you rent. And so if you're in a renting situation and you're past due on your rent and you have been affected by COVID, so maybe you lost hours on your job, maybe you lost your job altogether, maybe you had to stay home so you could take care of your children, whatever the case may be, we want you to really pay attention that this window is open now. So it's called the Mountaineer Rental Assistance Program, MRAP for short, and you can actually go to the website. So if you have internet services at home, you can go to wvmrap.com, so westvirginiamrap.com, and you can just call 211 if you don't want to write that down or try to remember. But that MRAP program is going to help get some money back out to citizens in West Virginia for rental assistance. And they are requesting people to call 211 if you'd like to be pre-screened for that program. So if you're hearing me today, you're hearing me tonight, you're hearing me next week, please feel free to call 211 24/7, 365. It doesn't matter what time you call. And that operator will be able to go through some pre-screening questions with you to see if you qualify for that MRAP program, and then immediately transfer you to a partner that's going to be able to give you some assistance on that application. So clearly, this is what we believe. Sometimes you need more than an internet search. You need a conversation, and 211 is there to help you get connected and to get help. The next thing I just want to mention in relation to 211 is you probably have heard a lot of talk about internet access in West Virginia, and I think as we saw, COVID really impact people who had to work from home, people who had to do homeschooling for the first time, Schoology, people who were doing Zoom meetings for work. Gosh, we've all done, you're on mute and all the tough things that go with Zooms and Teams and all the stuff that we've had to learn in technology. So we were really curious at West Virginia 211 about our callers and what challenges they may have in relationship to broadband or internet access. And so this is just a snapshot of what we've seen so far in about 3 weeks of our asking questions to callers who reach out to us through 211. And our questions have been pretty simple. Do you have access at your home? If so, great. Is it enough bandwidth for you? Do you have enough speed to work, to school, to do what you need to do? Yes or no? And you can see that surprisingly, most of our callers said yes. But the part that really intrigued us, and I think has really started some great conversations with the United Way and some of our partners, is if you don't have it, why not? And the number one reason is they can't afford it, is people can't afford it. And so for folks like United Ways who've been paying and helping with utilities for a long time, those utilities have pretty much been your